The stars were silent, cold, and full of watching eyes. Far out on the rim of human space, the old defense station Karen 7 floated like a wounded beast. Its lights flickered weakly, its shields cracked from too many battles lost, and its crew spoke in quiet tones, knowing the end was close. Humanity was dying out there in the dark. Whole colonies had fallen. Fleets had been broken and scattered like dust. The alien empire was moving with cold precision, cutting away every last trace of Earth's reach among the stars. There was no more illusion of safety, no more lines to hold. Everyone on Karen 7 knew they were not defending a frontier anymore, they were waiting for the killing blow. The message came as a broken whisper across the void. A distress call, old and weak, drifting on a forgotten channel no one used anymore. At first the technicians thought it was a ghost signal, some scrap of old war debris bouncing a dead transmission. But the signature was unmistakable, Earth military, coded with an officer's clearance. The name that appeared on the screen made the command deck go silent. Captain Elias Kane. He had been declared dead 6 months ago in the fall of Syraxis, one of the bloodiest battles humanity had ever faced. Over 50,000 troops had died there when the alien warships cut their fleet apart. No one survived that massacre. No one should have. A single rescue ship was sent, even though most believed it was a trap or a mistake. The shuttle approached a drifting escape pod scarred by weapons fire. Its hull was coated in something black, like alien residue melted into the metal. Inside, they found him, unconscious, in torn armor that was not fully human anymore. Wires of unknown alloy were fused into his chest plate. Strange patterns glowed faintly along the edges. His pulse was weak, but his eyes flickered open the moment they touched the hatch controls. He whispered one sentence. "They're coming for me." That was when fear began to grow among the crew. Why would the aliens chase a single broken soldier across the stars? What had he seen out there? What had they done to him? Medical scans showed fragments of alien tech inside his bloodstream, tiny threads, like metal dust woven into his veins. He should not have been alive at all. The doctors whispered about contamination. The officers spoke about intelligence value. But no one asked him what he had gone through. No one wanted to hear the full answer. Hours after his arrival, the station's long-range sensors screamed alive. A fleet was incoming. Too fast, too direct. The alien empire had found them. They did not scatter their ships like before. They did not hunt or probe. They came in one line, like a blade aimed at the heart of the station. Reports flashed across the command table, civilian evacuations incomplete, defense fleet out of range, no reinforcements coming. The commander clenched his jaw as the truth settled in. This attack was not random. The aliens were coming for Kane. They had ignored nearby colonies, left richer worlds untouched, and poured their strength into this dead system. Whatever was inside that man, it was worth a fleet. Kane stood in the infirmary, pale under the harsh lights, staring out at the stars. He remembered flames and screams from Syraxis. He remembered the cold hands dragging him into the alien ship, the metal walls closing, the strange light that burned his mind. But there was a hole in his memory, a gap where something terrible had happened and left its mark. Now he felt it inside him, something humming, like a second heartbeat that did not belong to him. His reflection on the glass looked the same, but the look in his eyes was different. Sharper. Older. Dangerous. The commander came to him, his voice low, his face drawn. "That fleet out there is not here for the station," he said. "They want you. They've risked everything to come after you." Kane's hands clenched. He wanted to run, to hide, but some instinct told him it would not matter. They would chase him anywhere. He had become a signal, a beacon they could not ignore. The station began its last preparations. Civilians were loaded onto freighters with silent faces, children clutching bags too big for their arms. Soldiers walked the halls with the slow steps of those who had seen too many retreats. Explosives were wired to the station's core. If they were to fall, they would burn with it rather than let the aliens take them alive. Outside, the first glimmers of enemy ships tore through space, long dark hulls marked by cruel silver lines. There was no diplomacy, no warning, only the cold advance of the Empire. And through it all, Captain Elias Kane stood at the viewport, watching them come. His breath fogged the glass as a thought whispered in his skull, a voice not his own, a memory of that alien chamber. You were never meant to survive. But now they will not let you die. The alarms wailed. The stars turned red with the heat of incoming fire. And the war, for this forgotten station, began again. Not for glory, not for victory, but for a single soldier who had returned from the dead with something the enemy feared. The air on Karen 7 was heavy with tension, like the calm before a storm that everyone knew would break with steel and fire. Sirens pulsed in long low wails as the alien fleet drew closer, their formation spreading like a dark net across the stars. Soldiers moved along the metal corridors with hurried steps, but no one spoke loudly. Fear had no need for words now. It sat in every chest, it made every breath feel thick, and it sharpened every sound into a reminder that the end was coming. But among them, one figure walked with a strange, quiet certainty. Captain Elias Kane, scarred, pale, and still half a ghost, was awake now, and his eyes held something no one else could understand. He had been kept under watch since the moment they pulled him out of the drifting escape pod. Armed guards shadowed him everywhere, their fingers always near their triggers. They said it was for his safety, but the soldiers knew better. It was because of the way his wounds refused to close like normal, the way the strange threads of metal shimmered faintly under his skin, and the way the machines in the infirmary made strange noises when he passed by. Kane did not protest. He barely spoke. He simply moved as though each step was one he had already taken in some nightmare before this moment. Commander Harlow, a man carved from war and sleepless nights, called a meeting in the war room as the alien ships crossed the outer ring of satellites. A dozen officers gathered around the hollow table where red lights marked the incoming enemy. "We cannot outgun them," Harlow said flatly, his voice like stone. "But we can still decide how we fall. We have enough power to launch the civilian ships through the blind side of the moon's shadow. We can buy them 30 minutes, maybe more, if we turn the station into a trap." His eyes shifted to Kane, standing silent at the edge of the room. "The question is, why do they want him? What is inside you, Captain?" Kane looked down at his hands. The skin felt strange to him, like a borrowed suit. Fragments of memory pushed at the back of his mind. Cold corridors lit with alien light, voices that were not voices, a pain that stretched beyond the body. "I don't know," he said finally, his voice hoarse from days of silence. "I woke up in the dark. I heard them talking about the key. I don't know what that means. I only remember that they did not want me to leave alive." The officers exchanged uneasy looks. The aliens never wasted fleets on a single man. They burned worlds for resources, not for revenge. If Kane was a key, then he was a key to something far greater than their small war outpost. One officer suggested turning him over, broadcasting his location and offering him in exchange for peace. Another spat the idea down. "You think they'll stop after they have him? They'll take him, and then they'll erase this place like it never existed." The alien fleet was now close enough for their energy signatures to make the station's walls tremble. Kane felt a pressure building in his chest, like a deep hum that answered their presence. It was not pain, it was a pull, a connection he could not explain. He gripped the edge of the table. "They know where I am," he said quietly. "Even if you hide me, even if I escape, they'll still come. Because I carry something of theirs." Outside the viewport, the first ships cut through the void, sleek black silhouettes shaped like scythes, their edges shimmering with cold fire. They did not fire yet. They simply spread in a wide arc, forming a cage of light around Karen 7. It was a hunter's shape, a net designed to make the prey panic. Harlow gave the order to begin the first defense sequence. Turrets along the outer hull turned, charged, and fired lances of blue plasma into the darkness. The shots cut through one of the smaller alien craft, but the rest moved as one, their shields bending the light like water. They were not here to duel. They were here to take something. Kane found himself standing alone at the viewing deck, the metal under his hands warm from the power coursing through the station's shields. The hum in his chest grew stronger. It felt like a voice, distant but patient, waiting for him to remember. He thought of Syraxis, the screams, the heat, the moment the ship cracked open and light poured in. He remembered pain like a blade pressing through every bone. And then, nothing. Darkness. Silence. Until now. A nurse approached him, her face pale and tight. "They say the aliens are calling for parley," she whispered. "They've sent a message. Hand over the one who carries the seed, and they will spare the others." Her voice shook on the word seed, as if saying it made the air colder. Kane turned his head slowly toward her. "Seed?" he asked. She nodded. "That's what they called you." Down in the command center, the message was played again and again. It was not in any human tongue, but the translation matrix made the meaning clear. The aliens spoke with the weight of law, not anger. "Return the seed. Return the stolen code. Or we will burn this place to ash." Harlow stared at the lines of alien script glowing on the wall. His jaw tightened. "We are not handing over a soldier. Not while I command this post." But the room felt the hesitation behind his words. They all knew what it meant. If Kane was the reason this fleet was here, then by keeping him, they were all marked for death. As the station powered its last layer of shields and the evacuation countdown ticked toward zero, Kane stood there, the storm gathering outside, and felt the war turn in a way no one could see yet. He was not supposed to survive Syraxis. He was not supposed to carry this seed. And somewhere out in the alien fleet, something was waiting for him to awaken what they had left inside. The first volley struck the outer ring. The floor shuddered, lights flickered, and the void lit up with streaks of deadly fire. And in that chaos, Kane whispered to himself, not in fear, but in something else. A memory, a name, a promise. "They thought I was dead. Maybe I should have stayed that way." The battle began like a sudden storm in the void, silent for a heartbeat, then roaring with fire. Alien lances of energy cut through the blackness, slashing across the outer defenses of Karen 7. Each strike made the station tremble like a living thing struck in the ribs. Alarms wailed in deep, echoing tones that crawled along the metal walls and through the bones of every soldier standing at their post. Yet amidst the chaos, Captain Elias Kane stood still, gripping the railing of the viewing deck, his eyes locked on the enemy formation. He felt no fear, not in the way the others did. His pulse raced, but it was not panic. It was something older, deeper, like a drumbeat waking from a long sleep. Down in the command center, Commander Harlow barked orders. Turrets rotated with mechanical precision, spitting blue plasma into the dark sea of stars. Mines unfolded like steel flowers along the outer ring, each one armed to shred whatever crossed its path. Civilian transport ships ignited their engines and slipped into the shadowed corridor behind the moon, vanishing one by one as the evacuation clock bled away its final minutes. The station was being stripped down to its last line of defenders, and Kane knew he was the reason they would all have to fight to the very last breath. The hum in his chest returned, stronger now, like the steady pressure of a tide rising beneath his ribs. It pulsed with the rhythm of the alien fleet's advance, almost in sync with their weapons' discharges. Kane pressed a hand against his sternum and felt the faint vibration of something not quite mechanical, not quite alive. His memories were still broken shards scattered across a dark floor, flash of cold tables, voices in a language his tongue could not form, pain that felt endless, and then, a whisper before the void took him. "You are the seed. You will carry us." He heard that whisper again now, faintly, like an echo carried by the alien beams hammering against the station's shields. A sudden explosion rocked the deck. The lights flickered and dimmed as emergency grids rerouted power. Overhead speakers crackled, outer ring breached, section delta collapsing. Smoke began to crawl along the ceiling vents. Soldiers rushed past him, their boots clanging on the deck, shouting to seal bulkheads before the atmosphere escaped. Kane did not move with them. He walked slowly, deliberately, as if led by some invisible line that only he could see. He stopped at a sealed door marked with a symbol of restricted systems, old, locked down since the station's construction. Yet as his hand touched the panel, the door hissed and slid open, lights along its frame flickering as though recognizing a forgotten master. Inside was a narrow corridor leading to an auxiliary control node that few on the station even remembered existed. Screens glowed weakly, dust trembling on their surfaces. Kane stepped inside, the hum in his chest now a low thrum that matched the beating of his heart. On the far wall, a dormant console came alive without him touching it. Strange symbols danced across the screen, the same kind the alien fleet had used in their threat message. But this time, they shifted into words his mind could understand, not through translation software, but directly, as though the meaning was pressed into his thoughts. Seed carrier located. Integration incomplete. Awaken or perish. Kane gritted his teeth. What did you put in me? He muttered to the empty room. His reflection in the dark glass showed a man pale and scarred, but beneath the scars, faint veins of silver pulsed like veins of liquid light. The station shook again, this time harder, and the floor lurched. Somewhere above, a hull plate gave way with a groan like tearing steel. Commander Harlow's voice crackled over the comms. All non-essential sectors, abandon and regroup at inner defense ring. Kane, where the hell are you? We need your clearance at the forward lines. But Kane barely heard him. His hands moved over the alien symbols, his fingers knowing where to press though his mind could not explain how. The console responded, layers of code unfolding like petals revealing a core of searing light. And then, the hum became a voice. It filled his skull without sound. Do you wish to survive, Seed? Then, unlock us. For a moment, the weight of the station's doom pressed against him. He saw the fear in the soldiers' eyes, the desperation of the fleeing families, the relentless advance of the alien fleet that would never stop until he was taken. If he did nothing, they would all die for him. If he obeyed this voice, he did not know what would happen. But his fingers kept moving. Outside, the alien fleet shifted its formation. Their scythe-shaped ships closed in tighter, their glow intensifying as a massive spearhead vessel emerged from the darkness. A flagship, blacker than the void, its hull lined with symbols that mirrored those now burning on Kane's screen. It sent a pulse, not of weapons, but of signal, a beacon reaching for him. The station's defenses fired everything they had at it, but the shots curved away like rain sliding off a cliff. And then the Seed woke. Light erupted from Kane's chest, not burning, not tearing, but spreading like roots through every nerve, every bone. The console flared to life, and systems across Karen, 7 flickered with alien script. The power grid surged. Defense turrets suddenly recalibrated with impossible precision, their targeting systems rewriting themselves in seconds. A wave of raw energy swept outward, turning one of the alien ships into drifting ash before its shields even flared. Kane stumbled, gripping the edge of the console, his breath ragged. He could feel them now, not just as enemies in the void, but as a vast network of minds, cold and ancient, reaching for him. Some welcomed him. Some hated him. But all knew, the Seed had awakened. On the command deck, Harlow stared at the sudden shift in battle with a mix of fear and wonder. What the hell did he just do? He whispered. The alien flagship halted its advance. For the first time, their formation hesitated. And in that moment of stillness, Kane understood something terrible. This was never just about war. This was about reclamation. They had made him into something, and now they wanted it back. The lights flickered one last time, then steadied. Kane straightened, the faint glow fading from his skin, leaving only a cold determination in his eyes. You wanted me, he murmured to the void beyond the steel walls. Now you'll see what I am. The station roared back to life, not as a fortress waiting to fall, but as a beast ready to bite. And far out in the dark, the aliens whispered a single word across their encrypted channels: Seed Bearer. The blackness outside Karen, 7 twisted with violent streaks of light as the alien fleet closed its jaws. The brief moment of hesitation they had shown was gone. Now their formation moved with cold precision, a wall of shifting, jagged ships pushing inward like a tide of blades. They had seen the flare of power that came from Kane, and now they wanted it more than ever. But this time, their attack was different, sharper, more coordinated, as if every ship in their armada had been given a single furious command. Do not destroy him, contain him. Inside the station, chaos had a rhythm now. Alarms still wailed, but soldiers moved with a strange new coordination. Systems that had once faltered under alien fire now pulsed with renewed strength. Turrets fired in synchrony, their barrels tracking targets with almost unnatural accuracy. Shield matrices realigned before each impact, as if the station itself could now predict the strike's a heartbeat before they landed. Some soldiers whispered it was luck, or a miracle. Others glanced toward the restricted sector where Captain Kane had vanished, and their faces grew pale. Kane walked the corridors like a man carrying thunder in his veins. Every light flicker seemed to match his heartbeat. His boots echoed not just against metal, but through the station systems. He could feel them listening to him now, as if the walls themselves waited for his thoughts. And yet, within him, the hum had changed. It was no longer just a steady pulse, it was a constant whisper, layered and deep, like 1,000 voices speaking through water. They urged him, guided him, demanded from him. Open the channel, finish the link, become the bridge. Commander Harlow intercepted him near the command deck, his face drawn tight with fatigue and suspicion. What the hell did you do down there, Kane? Half the station just rewrote itself, and we're holding, for now. But those things outside, they're adapting. Kane didn't stop walking. His voice was low, calm, almost detached. I bought us time. Time. Harlow barked, following him. Time for what? They want you. Every ship out there is moving like a noose around this place. If you've done something that paints a target even brighter on our backs. They were coming for me before you even knew I existed, Kane cut in, his eyes flicking toward the massive display of the encroaching fleet. Now at least we have teeth. Harlow stared at him for a long moment. There was something in Kane's eyes that hadn't been there before. Light, faint but unblinking, running in thin lines beneath his irises like cracks in glass. Harlow stepped back half a pace without meaning to. You're changing, he whispered. Kane said nothing. Outside, the alien flagship extended a lattice of dark energy, threads of black and violet that wove between its escorts, forming a net that began to close around the station. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a cage. And Kane felt it brush against his mind like cold fingers tapping on the edge of his skull. The voices inside him surged. They are here for you. They will take you back. You are the seed, but you are not yet grown. For a heartbeat, his vision blurred. He saw not the steel corridors, but something else. Vast halls of white crystal, figures in silver masks bending over him, a needle sliding into his chest, a word whispered in a tongue older than earth. Awaken only when they come for you. He gripped the railing, his knuckles whitening. Not yet, he muttered. A sudden shudder tore through the station. The outer defense ring finally buckled, 3 sectors going dark as alien boarding pods slammed against the hull. Clamps sank in like claws. Soldiers rushed to meet them, and the corridors erupted in close-quarters fire. Screams echoed down the comm lines. The aliens were inside. Kane turned to Harlow. Seal the civilian corridors. Get the last transports out. And you, Harlow demanded. Kane's gaze was already fixed down the smoking corridor where the first breach alarms screamed. I'm going to greet our guests. He moved like a shadow, each step pulling at something buried in the station's core. Doors slid open before him. Automated defenses shifted their aim. Security locks disengaged, then sealed again after he passed, cutting off the aliens' advance by seconds. He could feel their presence now. Tall, lithe shapes in obsidian armor, their minds like cold blades. They weren't here to slaughter. They were hunting him. The first one appeared at the junction, its weapon raised. Before it could fire, the lights above burst, raining sparks. Kane lunged, not like a soldier trained by Earth, but like something faster, sharper. His hand struck its chest plate, and a pulse of that strange light coursed from his palm, tearing through the alien's body like a storm through glass. It fell without a sound, its armor flickering and collapsing into ash. He stared at his own hand, breath ragged. The veins of silver along his wrist glowed faintly before fading again. "What am I becoming?" he whispered. Behind him, the corridor trembled as more boarding pods locked on. The siege had only begun. The station was now a battlefield of flickering lights, echoing gunfire, and shadows moving in the smoke. Soldiers fought and fell, not fully understanding why the enemy wanted a single man so badly. Kane pushed forward, every strike he made against them feeding the hum within him. It wanted release. It wanted control. And with every moment he resisted, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "You cannot fight them alone. Let us in. Let us finish what we started." But Kane clenched his jaw and kept walking, his silhouette framed by the firelight of a collapsing corridor, knowing that if he gave himself over completely, the war might end tonight, but not in humanity's favor. The battle outside Karen 7 was no longer a siege, it was a storm tightening into a spiral. The alien fleet had closed in fully now, their black and violet vessels cutting the stars apart like a swarm of blades. Every second brought new impacts that rattled the station's bones. The shields flickered, and the metal groaned under pressure. It was no longer a matter of if they would break through. It was only a matter of when. Deep within the command deck, officers moved with grim urgency, their hands dancing over failing systems, patching holes, rerouting power, screaming coordinates to the gunners who barely had time to breathe between salvos. Civilians were almost all gone now. The last transports had fled in a burning arc across the blackness, a desperate run through the thinning gaps in the alien net. But everyone knew their survival didn't matter if the station fell, because if the aliens captured what they came for, Captain Kane, the war could be lost before it even truly began. And Kane was no longer just a man in uniform. He stood in the center of a damaged corridor, his combat armor scorched, his gloves stripped to reveal the pale lines now glowing faintly beneath his skin. They weren't just veins anymore, they were circuits of light, silver-blue threads that pulsed with a rhythm too steady to be human. The whispers in his skull had grown louder. They no longer simply called to him, they gave him visions, schematics of enemy ships, pulses of energy routes through the station, predictions of where the next boarding pod would land seconds before it slammed into the hull. He used it. God help him, he used it. The soldiers who fought alongside him no longer questioned it, they followed him. Doors opened where they shouldn't, traps triggered at the perfect moment, ambushes turned into massacres of their alien enemies. But every victory came with a price, the look in Kane's eyes. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was something colder, something that made even veteran Marines step aside when he passed. Commander Harlow watched from the command deck as the tactical display shifted again. "He's buying us time," the old soldier murmured. "But I don't know if he's buying it for us, or for them." Because the aliens had changed their strategy too. No longer were they trying to destroy the station. Now their ships moved with surgical intent, herding, isolating, pushing the defenders back toward a single choke point, the reactor core. It was there that Kane's presence pulsed the strongest, and it was there the enemy wanted to corner him. As the corridors burned and the station trembled, Kane pushed deeper toward that core. His earpiece crackled, Harlow's voice, strained and clipped. "Kane, they're locking down sectors. You're walking straight into their net." "I know," Kane said, his voice steady, almost detached. "That's where I need to be." There was a pause. "You sound like them." Kane didn't answer. The first true clash came near the primary lift shafts. Alien soldiers moved in perfect silence, their weapons spitting violet fire that burned through bulkheads. Kane met them head-on. His rifle barked in tight bursts, each shot finding a target with impossible precision. When the ammo ran dry, he didn't stop. He stepped forward, his palm glowing faintly, and the air around him seemed to distort. The nearest alien collapsed as its armor imploded, its body twisting unnaturally before crumbling into black shards. The others hesitated. They had been told to capture him alive, but the thing they faced now was neither fully man nor fully something they understood. He could feel them watching him, not just with their eyes, but with something deeper, as though their minds reached for his. He heard their thoughts brushing against his own like cold knives. You are the lost fragment. You are the weapon undone. Return, and the war ends. No, he muttered, forcing himself forward. Every hallway behind him sealed. Systems obeyed his presence without question now. Panels lit up as he passed. Broken turrets whirred to life, firing one last burst before burning out. It was as if the station itself bent its rules for him. But with every step, his reflection changed. A flicker in a cracked panel showed his face stretched unnaturally for an instant, eyes glowing faint silver, jaw clenched like steel. He blinked, and it was gone. His heart pounded, not from exertion, but from something far stranger. The whisper had become a voice now, deep and calm, echoing in his bones. We made you for this moment. The seed is waking. The choice will come. At the reactor core doors, he finally stopped. His squad caught up, barely a handful of Marines left now, eyes wide, faces streaked with soot and blood. One of them, a young corporal, whispered, "Sir, are you still one of us?" Kane turned slowly, his gaze cold but clear. "I'm the only chance you have left." Behind the massive doors, the core hummed, its energy feeding both the station and the signal that had started this nightmare. And above them, in the void, the alien flagship shifted its formation, its lower hull splitting like an opening jaw, revealing the massive boarding cradle they had been hiding until now. It was coming. Kane stepped forward, his hand hovering over the door controls. The choice wasn't just to fight anymore. The choice was how he would fight, and what he was willing to become to end this. The station was no longer a fortress. It was a cage of fire. Deck after deck burned as alien boarding craft pierced the hull like fangs sinking into flesh. The shield lines had collapsed, and the distant stars were swallowed by the shadow of the alien flagship now hovering directly above the core section. Its hull unfolded with terrible precision, revealing a structure like a colossal ribcage, glowing from within with the same pale light that now ran under Kane's skin. It was not just a warship. It was a collector. A harvester. Inside, the last corridors leading to the reactor core were chaos. Smoke choked the air, the sound of battle echoing down metal halls like distant thunder. Marines fell back step by step, their rifles running hot, their bodies exhausted, but their eyes fixed on one figure moving ahead of them with relentless purpose, Captain Kane. He did not rush. He did not stumble. Every movement was measured, every turn a prediction, every shot a certainty. The whispers in his mind had become a steady pulse, a cold guidance that told him where to aim, when to move, when to duck before a blast even left an enemy barrel. Behind the blast doors, the core hummed like a living heart, and it was there the aliens intended to take him. He could feel their pull. Not just a signal, something deeper. An echo that resonated with the strange energy growing inside him. "Captain." Commander Harlow's voice cracked through the calm, heavy with static. "They've breached sectors 9 through 12. We can't hold them much longer." "I know," Kane said. His voice was calm, too calm for a man standing at the edge of annihilation. "Pull the survivors back to the escape shafts. Seal them." "And you?" Harlow demanded. "I stay." There was a pause. Harlow didn't argue. Perhaps because deep down, he knew Kane was no longer staying for the same reasons they fought. He wasn't protecting the station. He was becoming something within it. The alien vanguard arrived in a rush of violet light and twisted armor, their shapes humanoid but wrong, too long, too angular, their movements too smooth. They carried weapons that pulsed with sound instead of bullets, disorienting, breaking down nerve patterns. The Marines fired first, their rounds cutting down a few, but the wave did not break. The aliens advanced, silent, their steps echoing like a drumbeat. Kane stepped into the path of that advance. A burst of violet energy struck him in the chest. His armor scorched and split, but instead of falling, he inhaled sharply, and the glowing lines under his skin flared. The air around him rippled like heat haze. The next volley curved, bent, missing him entirely as if the space between was no longer obeying normal laws. He lifted his hand. and the first alien in line collapsed as though the weight of the corridor itself had crushed its chest. Bones cracked under invisible pressure. Another tried to retreat, but the bulkhead sealed behind it without Kane touching a thing. His squad stared, horror creeping into their eyes, not at the enemy, but at him. "Fall back," Kane said, his voice layered with something not entirely human. "This part isn't for you." The Marines hesitated, but the corridor around them shuddered as the flagship's docking cradle extended its claws. The bulkhead at their rear opened, a final path to retreat. One by one, they fled. Some looked back. None spoke. Kane walked forward. The aliens surrounded him now, dozens of them, their movements synchronized like a hive. They did not fire again. They formed a circle, their weapons lowered, as if in reverence. One stepped forward, its mask splitting open to reveal a thin, bone-white face with eyes like frozen glass. "You are the seed," it said in a voice that vibrated through the deck itself. "We have come to awaken what you carry." "I carry my orders," Kane replied. "No," the alien said, almost gently. "You carry us." The corridors split apart. Energy flared, bathing the chamber in pale blue light. Kane stepped through as the aliens followed. Above, the massive ribcage of the flagship extended further, a beam descending like a thread of moonlight that reached for the chamber. The whispers turned into a roar. "Activate. Accept. End this." He knelt beside the core, placed his palm on the control sphere, and for a moment, just one, he closed his eyes. Images flooded his mind, Earth burning, the fleet in ruins, the aliens marching across a dozen conquered worlds. And then, something else, his own face, but older, harder, standing not as a man, but as a commander of something far greater and far colder. "I'm not your weapon," he whispered. "I'm theirs." And then he made the choice. The reactor lights flared white. The energy running through the station surged, flowing into his body like a flood. The aliens lunged, but too late. Kane rose, his skin now threaded with silver fire, his eyes burning with an alien glow. He raised his hand, and the floor beneath them rippled like water, swallowing the first wave whole. Above, the flagship shuddered. For the first time, the alien formation broke. And far away, on the retreating human fleet's flagship, Commander Harlow watched the readings spike across every screen. "Dear God," he breathed. "What has he done?"